Hello. Well, it's it's repair time. We're going to be working on some actuator motors on the AC systems of our cars, and I should specify we're talking the factory AC systems, not the dealer AC and not the non-AC. The non-AC, your control panel looks like the following. You should just have maybe defrost on the top right, depending on your car's trim level, and then you'll have temperature on the left, and then bottom right is your fan speeds, and then that center slider, the unit seat says off heat, and then this isn't a very good photo, but there's an emblem on the top for defrost. It should look like this, or at least that defrost emblem anyways. But yes, so this is the non-AC climate control controller control panel. This is the one for the factory AC. If you have dealer AC, you'll have this along with a knob underneath, a smaller vent to the right, which I think is maybe for fan speed, and then another knob on the left just below the left smaller vent for temperature. And those kind of bypass the fan speed and temperature sliders. But yeah, that's its whole different thing, because there's the non-AC cars, and they have this, and their vent structure is like this. And we'll go into detail a little bit on this in just a minute. Then we have the dealer AC, which is this, but somewhere in here they modify it so they can insert an evap core, and then along with a couple other controls that we had talked about, and then doors to help actuate those. And then we have the factory AC, where it's set up just like this out of the get-go. So you're probably asking, well, what exactly is the difference then? Why do the non-AC cars not have the vacuum actuators we're going to talk about? Well, truth be told, the non-AC cars actually don't have any vacuum powering their climate control system whatsoever. It's all done through cables. Each of these sliders here, each of the sliders. There's the temperature slider. You can see it says warm, cool, and you can put that anywhere in between. And then there's this one in the middle where it says off heat and has a defrost emblem. This one on the far left, it's a cable that goes to a blend door, and as you move the slider up and down, it moves that blend door more open or more closed, depending on the direction you want to look at it. Same story with this one here for the panel. All the way down is off. There is a switch, so whenever that slider is at off, the fan is doing absolutely nothing. It's bypassed to off. Once you leave off, the fan will start working at whatever speed you set it to. The center is heat, and they talk about that heat. Yep, okay, so here's the off position. We have air coming in from the outside. It goes through the blower motor. It goes past the heater core, not through it, but past it. There's a door closing it off so air can't touch it. Goes past it, and then it's kind of stops right here at the heat defrost door. And since you have it off, that motor's not turning. And then, of course, in the non-AC cars, there is a pull handle on the bottom right and bottom left of the car underneath the dash. And by you pulling those, that diverts a flapper valve, or flapper door, sorry, that rushes cool air from the outside down into this panel and a chute down by your feet. And then same thing on the other side, on the left, if you were to pull that one on the driver's side. So it's not strictly depicting those, but to just know that they're there. And then heat, this is what it looks like at heat. So the only change we made is we're now using our temperature blend door, but that's assumed that you're using heat warm, like it says, heat in the warm position. You have air going through your heater core, which is full of warm coolant. And then air will come past the defrost door. So you'll get a whisper out of the defrost, but most of it's going to your floors. I believe you do have some going to the 2 outer panels, but primarily at the floors. If you have the heat or if you still have it set to the heat position, but you have the temperature somewhere in the middle, you're moving this blend orb more or less for the heater core. So it's still the same story. We're still going through the blower fan, but only a regulated amount is going through the heater core. X amount of air is going bypass around it. And that what dictates your temperature is how much goes through the heater core versus not. And then keeps traveling as normal. Heat in the cool position. Now we've fully shut off the heater core, and most of our air is flowing past, it's all flowing past that. We've completely bypassed the heater core. Most of it's flowing past the defrost. Again, it'll still whisper. And then most of it's going down to the floors and the panels. In defrost mode, we have pretty much the floor and vent panels darn near shut off or completely. I don't know how accurate this depiction is, but we have air going through our blower motor. If you have it set to warm, it's going to go through the heater core, and then it's going up to the defrosters, and nothing, or if anything, will be barely at all, is going to your panels and floors. But being this is a slider with cables, you can actually tweak this to your liking. If you want, you can put that middle one somewhere between heat and defrost, and then you can have this half cocked open. That way you got plenty. You're dividing it, in theory, 50-50 between the defrost vents and then the panel and floor vents. And then, of course, you can still choose whatever temperature you want. So that's all cable. Now let's get into the factory AC systems. This is all vacuum actuated, and we got a lot going on here. So we still have the cool to warm temperature slider, and this one still is a cable. As you move the slider up and down, there's a cable that opens and closes the temperature door. Here we go, this one right here, and it's pretty big. It completely closes off the heater core at cool, and when you set it to hot, it opens up completely. It takes on this line, so it opens up completely. All the air coming through here, it goes past your evap core and through your heater core, and then back into here where it will go into whichever vents you have selected. Next, we have our vent selections. We have off, we have AC max and AC normal. We have vents. These would be your panel vents. We have high-low. That is your panel vents and your lower vents, which is heat. Heat is your lower vents, your floors by your feet. And then you have defrost. And I believe with these, the fan speed, I believe there's 3 fan speeds for the AC. Well, I know there's 3 fan speeds for the AC, factory AC. But for non-AC, I think it's just 2. You get a low and a high. If I'm wrong, please say something. But the dealer ones, I think the dealer AC, I think those are 3 notches as well. Low, medium, and high speeds. So as you change out each of these, temperature never really changes much. But if you have it in AC, this door is going to open and close. When you set it to AC, this door will close off from the outside air so that you're just recirculating what's in the cabin whenever you're in AC, and that's the only time that door is actually moving. But depending on how that's, whether you're using AC or not, just dictates when that's open or closed. But air's always still coming through here. If you're using AC, there's going to be there's going to be refrigerant moving through this evaporator core. So if you have it set to warm AC, you're going to have a nice warm, dry air coming through here. If you have it set to cold, it's going to be nice, cold, dry air coming through. It goes through the heater core. If you have it set to heat, if you don't, it's going to be closed off like it's showing right now. Cold air comes through here. And then here's where it talks about each of the few positions. And it's able to achieve this because the vacuum actuator for this has a vacuum, has a vacuum line on each side of the actuator. So then it's kind of like a hydraulic cylinder, of like a front end loader, where if we imagine there's a cylinder here, and if we apply vacuum to my thumb, it moves the whole cylinder down. If we apply vacuum to my finger, it moves it all up. But if you leave it, if they both have vacuum, it should even out, sit in the middle. But then you can favor one of the two sides, depending on how you move your vacuum. That's how this does it. And that's how it differentiates between floor, and vents, and only the vents are defrost. If I believe when everything is correct, you can't have defrost and floor. Wait, no, hold on here. Okay, it talks about this some. Okay, so then this is the door combination setup for these. All right, yep. So you're welcome to pause this and study this chart. Each of these are just locations. Oh, there we go. And then when they should be open and closed. And I should mention, this is the factory service manual, specifically for body, chassis, and electrical. We'll set this to the side, because I find this manual a little bit more helpful. This is the vacuum and electrical troubleshooting manual. Here it actually shows the vacuum valving. It comes through here. So this is the control panel. This is that. But this is how it's valving, or valved, all the vacuum. And you can see what's where. They got the same thing for electrical switches. It's very intuitive and simple to read. Very handy. So by default, it's set up so that the defrost door is always open. So this notch space is its normal resting position. It's actually down. So if something were to happen to this vacuum motor, this door is always going to just hang down. You always have air going to defrost going up, because if it just hangs down, it's closing off all your panel vents. But if you can apply a vacuum, it's going to flip up, and now you'll have air coming out to your panel vents. And here's that two-way valve we were talking about earlier. It kind of acts as a cylinder. It's got a rest position, a middle position, a high position, and depending on which section's pulling from, it pulls more or less from that. And otherwise, that's about it. Yes. Oh, let's see. Okay, so only max AC will have the recirculating air, apparently. Even though the shop manual says you would for AC normal and AC max. Fascinating. I'll have to double check that sometime for you, and then I'll put it in the descriptions. Anywho, okay. Well, what made me get into the process of figuring all this stuff out? Well, I hopped in my car this spring, pulled it out of storage, and for the life of me, I could not get air to flow out of my panel vents. This one, right here. I didn't know why. I thought, well, maybe one of my blend doors is jam stuck, because I knew on my AC car it was all vacuum actuated. But so I start removing some panels. If you remove the if you can imagine on the dashboard, this is the control panel. There's a piece of trim that goes around this pretty large rectangle, and if you have AC, there's going to be a vent here and a vent here. If you have dealer AC, it's a small vent knob, small vent knob. But I have factory AC, so it's two large vents here. Remove that panel. If you have non-AC, they're both blanked out. But you remove that panel and you'll have straight access through the left side. You just can't see it through the right side. But through the left side, you can actually see the blend door hiding back behind here. We'll hop out in the car in a little bit to show you, possibly. And as I moved the controller around, I saw that blend door wasn't moving. So I reached my hand inside, manipulated it. So I've had mice in my HVAC box before, but it's been a long time. But it's possible that as you use it, they like coming in through this outside air thing. So they'll come in here and make a giant nest over by the blower motor, and they can't really get past the evap core. So they'll fill this full of insulation from inside the car. As you run the blower motor, it does shoot a little bit of that out here and there, but most of it will get stuck around the motor fins, or right about here where my finger is will be your blower motor blower motor resistor pack, sorry. And the problem is these are all just coils. Each coil is the resistance, and then there's a thermal limiter. And you can see here I wrote down, if this area reaches 300 degrees Fahrenheit, this burns up, and then you'll have no fan speed except for high. And what happens is if your HVAC box is full of insulation or mouse nest, whatever, it will get onto here as these get plenty hot, if you can imagine. And they'll actually smolder or start a small fire. This thermal limiter will sense the heat, and it'll trip. It'll melt. It'll melt at 300 degrees, and then you only have high. You lose your mid-range speed controls. Anyhow, it's possible that fluff can actually get through the evap core, and it can get jammed up inside some of these blend doors. Not that it's too common, because obviously you would have to go through the evap core to do it. And if you have this set to heat, it would have to go through the heater core too. But you could still have debris end up in these guys. Especially since there's no cabin air filter, so if you drive down a lot of dusty driveways, you can collect some amount of dust through here. These are actually pretty good at staying pretty clean, but you can collect dust in here, and that can eventually jam your seat blend doors, theoretically. But anywho, I made sure that was functioning fine. So my next step was making sure that this vacuum actuator was working all right. Being I could move the blend door by hand just fine, and that something had to be wrong vacuum wise. So I go up underneath the dash and I find the vacuum actuator, this guy, and as I move this plunger, because this attaches to the blend door, as I move it, I can hear it move air, and that's a good sign. That means that we have some amount of sealing going on in here, but we don't know how much. So I take the vacuum line off, close this up, I put my finger over it, and it doesn't seal. Oh, great. Okay, well, there's my problem. If this isn't sealing, then that's not going to shrink under vacuum. Because while I was playing around with the blend door, as I was opening that with my fingertips, as I reached inside the vent, this actually held in position once or twice, but that's only out of like 30 tries. So obviously needed tending to. So I take the vacuum line off, and since it's so far underneath the car, I attach a new vacuum line to it, and then I sit in the seat and I suck on it. And no matter how hard I sucked, I couldn't make this thing move at all. Versus a new unit. Sucking on it, you probably won't make the plunger go in. But if the plunger's already in and you suck on this, you'll be able to keep it at whatever position you want. I can actually demonstrate that for us here. So right now it's fully opened, and since it's black, the camera really doesn't like it. Keep track of the tip here then. So I'll close that, put my finger over the end. You see it's still inside. And when I release my finger, out it comes. Bada bing, bada boom. That's how vacuum actuators ought to work. This guy wasn't doing that. And as I was trying to get it out, I had found out why. Eventually, while I was trying to get it out, it was jammed up like this. But I got it out, and inside was a bent-up paper clip. I don't know who in the world needed a paper clip up inside their dashboard, or how the heck they were able to do it. But somehow there was a paper clip in here. I don't understand why. But we'll show you here. That's actually what had punctured this guy. There we go. And anyone can take these apart. You just simply peel around this folded over rim. On the stock ones, it's only pinched at like 2 places, and then the rest is barely folded over. So you just unfold it all, and then the one end kind of looks like a donut now will come undone from the larger part of the body with the mounts on it. And this is what will happen, is you get this whole assembly coming out at you. The top half, we'll call it the spring. The bottom half is now loose. And then the diaphragm with actuator rod itself. But right here be the culprit. Yep. That's why it's not sealing anymore. That paper clip, we don't know how it got in there or why it was in there. Ended up puncturing this thing because it's a pretty tight fit. Let's stick this back on so we can show you. But between this lower outer shell and the inner side diaphragm, it's a pretty tight fit. I'm moving it as far left and right as I can, and you can see it's really not much. So all it took was that paper clip to favor one side, gets between the diaphragm and the wall, and it punctures a good old hole inside my diaphragm. So this no longer seals. So we'll talk about how I went about replacing that in a minute. And the service manual says you actually have to disassemble the dashboard to get this guy out. You don't have to. Granted, it's extremely uncomfortable and rather difficult getting at the 2 screws to get this out from underneath the dashboard, but you are able to do it without removing the dashboard. You will find it, if we were to be looking at the dashboard itself, let's pretend it's this blue piece, and imagine these are your instrument clusters on the left, and on the right is the passenger half. You'll find it as you lay down underneath it and look up inside of it. You'll see it right about this area. Kind of between, it's basically straight up above the gas pedal, the throttle. Far up there, man. Very far up there, because keep in mind this control panel right behind it. You can see the blend door right in here. If you were to remove the vents, you can find that blend door right here. So then the actuators like right here. Really hard to get up in there, but if it's not too rusty, you have a little bit of luck, a lot of patience, and a nice slender body with a long arms and a good selection of tools, you can get her out. Extracting this and diagnosing it consumed about an hour. Extracting it without diagnosis, so that should only be about a 20-30 minute project. Maybe 40 if there's a lot of rust. But at that point, it might be better to just pull out the dash. Anywho, so we got this out. Let's discuss troubleshooting for these other ones. So for troubleshooting this one, if no matter what you do, you only get air out of the defrost vent and not the panels. If you never get air coming out of your panels, it's because this door is shut, whether it's this vacuum actuator at fault or not. This one here, this one controls heat and defrost positions. Yes. Yes, it controls the floor vents. If no, I believe, I'd have to double check, but I believe natural resting position should be down too. So if no matter what you do, you can't get air coming out of your floor vents, this is the one you need to be looking into. And this one is directly below this guy by about 4 or 5 inches. So if you're trying to get to this one, don't confuse it with that. You'll be able to tell this one apart. It's a little larger. Because there's this guy. Imagine it being this big instead. It's noticeably larger, but it also has 2 vacuum lines coming out of it. And then there's this one, far other side. This one would be pretty hard to diagnose. But if you go outside the car, pop open the hood, inside the cowl tray on the far passenger side, you'll see a plastic cover. Remove that plastic cover. It's just a whole bunch of little clips. Remove that plastic cover. You should be able to see right down inside this. Natural position, I believe, should be in recirculating mode. So you should be able to see right down in it towards the blower motor. If you shoot a flashlight in there, you should be able to see the door, see down past the door. If this is working, then whenever you're using AC max for sure, maybe even AC normal, again, we'll figure that out. You should be able to see this door shut. But that's about it as far as diagnosing goes. And something to keep in mind is these will only contract if they have enough vacuum placed on them. So if you have a really bad vacuum leak, I happen to have a minor one. On this black plastic line going to this check valve, I had a vacuum leak where Ford had zip tied this from the factory against the loom, the wiring loom. This plastic line had rubbed through the plastic corrugated sheathing of the wiring loom, so rubbed that raw and started rubbing off some insulation of the actual wires within. Well, while I was doing all of that, this had finally rubbed through and it had a pretty good pinhole. That's where it was leaking some air. So I fixed that, retuned the carb after that, because now I had less air leaking through it. And then after I did that, I checked all of these quite thoroughly, and then still my only problem was just this one AC vacuum motor. So, replacing it. Well, this guy must be as rare as all frickin' beans. And I know why. This is only found on, as far as our cars go, it's only found on the AC cars. So from 81 to 90 Escorts, this will only be on the factory AC cars. There's not too many of those. I have... crap, what am I up to? I got 15 or 16 Escorts and EXPs. Guess how many have factory AC? I think 3. And then I got 1 dealer AC. Air conditioning is pretty rare in these cars, you know. But anywho, so I looked all over. I couldn't find these anywhere. New, old, stock, used, whatever. And since they were only on AC cars, if I were to go and try pulling these off of my my other AC cars, so I'd still have a shortage. I gotta hope and pray that those are all right. So I start hunting around, looking around, and the service manual actually gives a partial part number for it. They give a part number for the actuator itself. Trying to find that here. But the problem is it's missing the prefix. Here it is. So this is what I was talking about. You'll find it way the heck up here. And it gives you that as a part number. But it's missing the prefix. And the prefix states what year and platform it would be for. So this is an 82, so it should be something like E1 and then 2 more digits, like UZ, OF, something like that. And then there's this part number, and then on the far right, the suffix. That would be the part revision. So if this part had 6 changes throughout its life, you'll see like A8, for instance, something like that. So this is all I had to go off of. Well, at least I got something. So I start looking around 1980s Fords, and I found darn near identical one, but for a Bronco. And then here's another image where you can actually see how it's mounted up in there. Getting at these 2 screws is quite a pain in the butt, but they're just 1/4-inch screws, and that's where I got another part number for it. And that one didn't help too much either. Again, just like the other one, that's the fix, not the prefix and not the suffix, just the fix, which doesn't fix my problem. Anywho, so I start looking around, and the Bronco one I find is freaking identical to this, except it's got a longer shaft, and it's still bent in the same way. And I thought, well, that's no problem. If the shaft instead comes out to my pinky, well, whoop-de-doo, I'll drill a hole exactly where this one needs to be, and then we'll be good. But it's the only one I could frickin' find on the internet anywhere, and it's a new old stock one on eBay. They want $60-some for it. That's a lot of money just for, well, this. 2 tin caps. One has a nipple. One has a hole. Granted, one has these little ear mounts, but I could cut these off and weld it onto another one if I gotta. A rubber diaphragm with a rod or a stem, whatever you like to call it, and spring. $65 for this, and I still have to drill a hole in it? No. I don't need to be cheap, but $65 for it not to be right as a racket. So, found this. A little bit of digging, and this actually uses the same, again, not the it's got a different prefix, it's got a different suffix, because this is from a 1990s, like late 1990s, for sure, early 2000s Ford Econoline. That'd be the Ford E-Series vans. This whole freaking thing. This plastic and the foam and everything. But, most importantly, this is the same as this, just it doesn't have the ear mounts. But oh well, no ear mounts, no problem. So I got this guy, and this was only $45. And there's millions of them out there. They're all over Amazon, eBay, Google, whatever. However the heck you want to get a hold of them. They exist, and that's all I need. But this little plunger rod is identical to this one. The diameter appears to be identical to the original one. Even the bent nipple for the vacuum line is identical. The whole housing itself, in every dimension possible, seems identical. The only difference is the mounting system. So that'll be the next step in this video, is for me to go through, bust out these rivets, take the vacuum actuator off of this piece of plastic, because Ford had went through and they streamlined this kind of stuff for sure. By the right around 2000, they started streamlining all the components like this. If you had to replace the blower motor in your Contour, your blower motor comes on a giant plastic mounting flange, and the EXP one kind of does, but it comes on this giant flange, and by doing that, they're able to make it fit multiple cars. You know, the same story here. And as these blend doors and actuators shift from vacuum to electric, you'll see that too. One electric module will fit 8-9 different cars, even though their dashboards and HVAC systems are completely different. Some of them will even come on plastic assemblies like this, and all you have to do is undo a screw, and now that unit itself will work on 50 cars versus it being on this, and now it works on 12, you know. So they were able to kind of streamline things, and then play aftermarket sources like Dorman caught on. Here's the Dorman part we are using. So you're able to go out there and fetch this one. And as time goes on, I'll try finding aftermarket solutions for the other ones or OEM solutions. But it seems the one that has the 2 vacuum ports, this one seems pretty common. It seems that most of the 70s Fords were using this, which means there's a lot of aftermarket help for that. But even on this Dorman unit, that's the part number printed right there on the plastic housing. So you type up that, cut out these rivets, start using this guy. But that's going to be our next step. I'm going to pause so I can do that, and when we come back, this will be partially disassembled, and then we can compare them pretty full, and then we'll see if it's necessary to actually peel this back and fully disassemble it like we did this. Because one option we have is we can fully disassemble this and just put the diaphragm and plunger alone back inside this canister, fold the edges back over, and then boom, brand new refurbished, and it will look like no one even did anything. It just freaking worked. Alrighty. Well, simply quick and easy actually. So far, just simply sticking a screwdriver between here and here, bust off the rivets, little plastic melted tabs. We'll call those rivets for now, and away this comes. One thing here is the bottom half is entirely plastic, and that's not too bad. I mean, if we wanted to, we could disassemble this top lid, cut off this mount, and weld it onto here. And you can't just do this how it sits. You will melt that rubber diaphragm on the inside. So we're going to disassemble this completely and see if we're able to just change out the innards. It's going to be very low cost and very low labor. Just takes a little bit of time. So let's take a screwdriver and start playing out this whole rim here. Okay, well that took a little bit of work here. Since the bottom half was plastic, I was trying to do without it flexing too much, because if it pinches hard enough, then we could risk ruining this guy. If you imagine it turning into an oval and then we try to extract it, we can ruin the ceiling mating surfaces. And the whole, well, they don't make stuff like they used to. Well, well, I don't know, man. The steel they used on this guy was quite a bit softer. Maybe it's only an anodized aluminum. But geez, the new one was quite the fighter. But we got it off, and yeah, there's hardly any difference between these two. We got the springs here. Get those side by side. There is just about no difference. They're the same height. The old one is softer. We'll probably go that route. That way it takes less vacuum to work this thing versus this. So I got a spring for other uses. Set that there. It's fine. Diaphragms themselves. Tell me which one's old, tell me which one's new. There's hardly any difference at all between these two guys. They are essentially the same diameter, or at least they're close enough that they'll be completely compatible. So I think we'll be in for a real treat. The question does the new one fit in the bottom of the old cup, Well, yes, it does, with a little bit of room to spare. And that is well. Let's do room for this gasket to seal up in there. So we'll pause a minute. I'll get a spring. I'll stick this inside, and then we'll try it out. Yeah. So I stuck the old spring back in it, just because it is weaker. So if I use the old weaker spring, this should work better. And now, if I push the plunger in. There we go. It's kind of hard doing this while holding camera on one end. We can hold this here, let up, and it closes. Let's try this again now that I can refine my technique. There we go. We'll get my finger out of there, hold it upright so it doesn't jam. Releases. Boom! Problem solved, man. Bada boom, bada boom. So let's set this here, and I can show you again that the rod length is absolutely perfect between these two. And the hole size, identical. Identical. So this will go back in my car. None will be the wiser. And then I can finally have air coming out of my panel vents. Woo-hoo! And keep an eye out. I'll be sure to add the link in the description as time goes on. If you find these, or at least a part number, please let me know. And as we find more aftermarket sources like this to this conversion for the other vacuum actuators in the factory AC cars, and then whatever the heck's in the dealer AC cars, we will add that info in there as well. But for now, I'm going to recrimp this, kind of how the factory did it. We'll do it in just a couple more spots so we know it's sealing well, and then it won't pop itself apart as we go down the road and actually use this thing. But we're golden now.